The first warning slipped through our mailbox on a crisp Monday morning in September 2024, a venomous jab cloaked in the sterile formality of HOA letterhead. It was bold, red, and screaming, violation notice. Margaret Voss, the self-crowned dictator of Willow Creek Lane in Ashwood, Oregon, had declared our front yard an abomination. Our modest garden, bursting with zinnias and cosmos, was in her eyes a blight on the neighborhood's pristine aesthetic. I laughed it off, crumpling the paper and tossing it into the recycling bin. Margaret was infamous for her clipboard crusades measuring hedges to the millimeter, citing mailboxes for unapproved shades of gray. But targeting our flowers? That was a new low, even for her. My wife, Emily, wasn't as dismissive. Over coffee, she stirred her mug anxiously, her brow furrowed. Maybe we should just trim it back, Tom. You know how she is. Remember what she did to the Parkers' holiday lights? I shook my head, resolute. No way. Sophie loves that garden. I'm not tearing it down just because Margaret's got a vendetta. Our 5-year-old daughter, Sophie, lived for that patch of earth, her fairy kingdom, where she'd spend hours whispering to her flowers, naming each one Luna, Starbeam, and her favorite, Velvet Glow. 3 days later, the second letter arrived, its tone sharper, like a blade honed for battle. Final warning. Immediate compliance required. Attached were photos of our garden, marked with angry red circles highlighting offenses. Our zinnias were too wild, our cosmos too tall, our entire setup a violation of some obscure HOA rule about uniform curb appeal. Emily's unease deepened, but I was defiant. It's just flowers, Em. Sophie's joy is worth more than Margaret's power trip. Still, the certified mail receipt for the third notice, threatening fines, liens, and legal action, sent a chill through me. Margaret began her uninvited visits, striding across our lawn with a tape measure, snapping photos, and sighing theatrically, as if our garden were a crime scene. This chaos is dragging down property values, Mr. Larson, she'd say, her voice dripping with disdain. Your daughter's noise doesn't help either. Some of us value peace. Sophie's laughter, her playful chatter with her stuffed owl, Mr. Twinkle, was now excessive noise. My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. She was a bully, nothing more. Then came the moment that shattered everything. It was a radiant Saturday morning, the kind where sunlight dances through maple leaves and the air smells of fresh-cut grass. Sophie, in her lavender dress dotted with tiny yellow stars, twirled through her garden, clutching Mr. Twinkle, her giggles a melody that warmed my heart. I sat on the porch, sipping coffee from a mug Sophie had painted best ad ever in her wobbly script, watching her weave stories of fairy queens and talking flowers. But peace doesn't last in Margaret's world. She stormed across the street from her immaculate Victorian home, her face twisted with rage, her auburn hair fraying from its usual perfection. At 55, Margaret had ruled Willow Creek Lane for a decade, ever since she'd arrived from a far superior suburb in Portland, as she never failed to remind us. For weeks, she'd hounded us about the garden, citing rules nobody had enforced in the 9 years we'd lived here. We thought she was just being her usual petty self, the woman who'd find the Wilsons for a birdhouse 2 inches too wide. But today, her eyes held something darker, something unhinged. Your garden is a disgrace, she shrieked, her voice piercing enough to set off a dog's barking down the block. It's a magnet for pests, a stain on our neighborhood's image. Before I could respond, she yanked a lighter and a small gas can from her oversized leather tote. Time froze. The sharp stench of gasoline hit me as she unscrewed the cap. Sophie stopped spinning, her hazel eyes wide with fear, clutching Mr. Twinkle tighter. What are you doing? I shouted, my coffee mug shattering on the porch as I lunged toward them. But Margaret's gaze locked on Sophie, a sickening smirk curling her lips. In one horrifying motion, she splashed gasoline onto Sophie's dress, the liquid soaking the fabric. I was running, screaming, but she flicked the lighter. Flames erupted with a roar, engulfing my little girl in a nightmare of orange and yellow. Her scream, sharp, terrified, ripped through me, echoing off every house on the street. I tackled her, smothering the fire with my jacket, my hands burning as I beat back the flames. Sophie's tiny body trembled, her skin red and blistering, her sobs breaking my heart. "Daddy, it hurts," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Neighbors poured out Mrs. Callahan in her slippers, dialing 911, Mr. Lee with his garden hose. Then Gwen, family frozen in shock. A teenager, Ethan, tackled Margaret as she tried to flee, her heels clicking frantically. Police sirens wailed within minutes, officers cuffing Margaret as she ranted about standards and lessons. The ambulance ride to St. Joseph's Hospital was a blur of paramedics and prayers. Sophie, drifting in and out, gripped my hand, her eyes searching mine for answers I couldn't give. In the Dr. Rachel Kim, a burn specialist, delivered the gut punch, second-degree burns covering 30% of Sophie's body, requiring grafts, surgeries, and months of therapy. Seeing her in that hospital bed, bandaged and pale, hooked to machines, broke me. "Why did she hate my flowers, Daddy?" she asked, her voice so small. I had no words, only a rage that burned hotter than the fire. Margaret wasn't just a tyrant. She was a thief. With my lawyer friend, Mark Thompson, I dug into HOA records she'd conveniently misplaced. We found thousands siphoned from community funds lavish trips to Paris, a sleek Audi, a wardrobe of designer bags all paid for by neighbors she terrorized. Emails revealed her contempt, calling us pathetic suburban drones. Neighbors shared their own scars. Mrs. Ellis, a widow, mocked for her unmowed lawn weeks after her husband's death. Mr. Khan, a veteran, fined for his flagpole. The Lopez family reported to CPS over their kids playing in their own yard. Each story fueled my mission. This wasn't just about Sophia, it was about freeing Willow Creek Lane. Detective Laura Chun, who'd arrested Margaret, built a case beyond arson, now attempted murder, adding embezzlement, harassment, and fraud. The trial, in April 2025, was a reckoning. I testified, holding a photo of Sophie in her garden, describing how Margaret set my daughter ablaze. Neighbors followed Mrs. Ellis, voice steady, Mr. Khan, in his uniform, little Isabella Lopez, reading a letter about her fear. The jury took 3 hours, guilty on all counts. Margaret got 15 years, stripped of HOA power, ordered to pay restitution. Willow Creek Lane celebrated with a block party, kids playing freely, neighbors laughing without fear. Healing took time. Sophie, now 6, insisted on rebuilding her garden bigger, so everyone can see it. It became a community effort. Mrs. Callahan donated peonies. The Lopezes brought wildflower seeds. Ethan built trellises. Then Gwen twins painted signs. Mr. Khan added a flagpole for seasonal banners. The garden bloomed into a symbol of resilience, drawing visitors from across Ashwood. On a sunny April morning, exactly a year after the attack, Sophie planted the first seeds, her smile brighter than her scars. "My flowers are back, Daddy," she said, hugging me, Mr. Twinkle under her arm. Willow Creek Lane became a family, bound by love for a brave girl and a shared vow to never let fear rule again. What would you have done if Margaret targeted your family? Should HOAs have this much power, or are they breeding ground for control freaks? Could you forgive someone who hurt your child like this? Share your thoughts below, like, and subscribe for more stories that hit hard.